She grabbed my wrist in the checkout line, and her grip was too strong for a woman her age. "When your wife leaves," she whispered, "do not touch the snow in your yard." I laughed it off. 24 hours later, I was on my knees on my own porch, staring at a backyard that would end one marriage, expose a murder plot, and turn a 70-year-old contractor into the only man smart enough to survive his own family. My name is Booker Washington. I built my house with these two hands, brick by brick, back when I still believed love was enough to hold a roof up. I was wrong. It started at the grocery store during the storm of the century. The woman in front of me, Mrs. Higgins, had her card declined. I saw the shame rising in her neck, so I stepped up and paid. $50. Nothing to me, dignity to her. But at the door she grabbed my arm, her milky eyes suddenly sharp as glass, and gave me that warning. Then she vanished into the snow like she was never there. I drove home telling myself she was just a confused old woman. The unease wouldn't leave my stomach. When I walked through my front door, I found out why. Suitcases lined my hallway. My wife of 40 years, Lucille, was running around in a summer dress. "I'm going to Florida," she said, not even looking up. "I can't take another winter in this drafty house with you. I'm suffocating." Her son-in-law, Jared, a smug failed stockbroker, was waiting in the driveway with my daughter Chantel, who wouldn't even meet my eyes. Jared told me to keep the heat on so the pipes didn't burst in this shack. Then they drove off into the storm and left me standing in my own doorway, alone, with the heat pouring out into the dark. I poured a whiskey. My hands were shaking, not from cold, from rage. Boring, she'd called me. I was the one who paid every bill, fixed every leak, made sure she never worked a day in her life. This was my reward. The snow kept falling. Out of habit, I grabbed my shovel to clear the walkway, and then I heard it, Mrs. Higgins's voice in my ear, clear as if she stood beside me. "Do not touch the snow." I let go of that shovel like it was on fire. I turned off every light and sat in the dark, watching my backyard disappear under white, waiting for a morning I couldn't explain why I was afraid of. When the sun came up, I understood. The front walkway, where Lucille and Jared had dragged 4 suitcases through the snow the night before, was perfectly smooth. No footprints, no divots, like nobody had ever walked there. I'm a contractor. I know how snow settles, and that wasn't settling. That was impossible. Then I looked at the backyard, and my knees nearly gave out. Fresh, sharp footprints. A deep drag mark 2 feet wide, the width of a suitcase, or a body, leading from the side of the house, past our security camera's blind spot, straight to the garden shed. The shed Jared had padlocked 3 years ago, claiming it was just storage for Chantel's old boxes. My phone buzzed. A text from Lucille. "Arrived safely in Florida. Sunny and 80 here already. Love you." 2 things stopped me cold. Lucille never wrote "love you." She always signed her full name, and when I checked the weather in Miami, it was 68 degrees and storming. She was lying, or someone was lying for her. I grabbed my old binoculars and focused on that padlock. Caught in the hasp was a shred of pale blue silk. The same scarf Lucille had been folding the night before. She wasn't in Florida. She was 50 feet from my kitchen window, locked in a cold, dark box, and I was standing in a house that had become a stage. I didn't run outside. If I left tracks, I'd destroy the only witness I had, the snow itself. Instead, I texted back like a fool who believed the lie and waited. At 8 that morning, Jared video called me. Sunglasses, a pool glittering behind him, a woman in Lucille's straw hat and yellow sundress lounging in the distance. "She needs space, Booker, no close-ups. She's fragile." I played along, my voice trembling, my hand shaking on cue. But I wasn't watching Lucille. I was watching the palm tree behind her, dead still, while the wind clearly moved his shirt collar in the pool water, and the shadows were wrong, high noon shadows at 8 in the morning. It was a green screen, a loop, filmed God knows when, pasted behind his smirking face. Then came the real reason for his call. "You should let us help you, Booker. Just sign a temporary power of attorney so we can access your accounts, get you medicine, fix the furnace." There it was, the golden key that would let him empty my accounts before I was cold in the ground. I played the dying old man, coughed, trembled, agreed to sign. He said he'd send a notary within the hour, through a blizzard, on a Sunday, which told me everything about how legitimate that notary would be. Before I hung up, I noticed a red glint inside my heating vent, a camera. They'd been watching me the whole time. So when I called Mrs. Higgins from a burner phone to ask her to watch my shed from her window, I made sure to end the call, pretending I'd just ordered a pizza. "They're coming," she told me. "Do not sign anything. Then, before hanging up, check the vents." She already knew. That night I broke into my own shed using a crowbar, careful not to leave new prints outside the trail already there. Inside wasn't a body. It was a film set, a green screen, tripod lights, the blonde wig and sundress from the video call, cigarette butts, energy drink cans. They'd turned my property into a production studio to fake my wife's existence. and sitting in a director's chair was Jared's leather notebook. I flipped it open. Asset liquidation strategy, Phase 1, isolate Lucille. Phase 2, stage the departure, make Booker look unstable. Phase 3, the digital ghost, fake proof-of-life videos. Then, under contingencies, Plan B, if I refused the power of attorney, stage an accident, gas leak, explosion, or a fall down the stairs. Double funeral, double insurance payout, house sells faster as a teardown. I wasn't just in their way, I was a line item. Headlights swept the driveway. Jared and Chantel, back at midnight, hauling something heavy, wrapped in a blanket toward the shed. I bolted for the house, buried my coat and boots, and threw myself into my armchair just as they pounded on my front door, screaming that I'd threatened Lucille with a knife. Police sirens lit the windows red and blue. An officer found a blood-stained bat planted in my closet. I was handcuffed and hauled into a squad car while Jared whispered in my ear that the asylum had great heating, and by the time I got out, my house would be a parking lot. In the holding cell, I remembered Mrs. Higgins's number, scrawled on my grocery receipt. I called it. Her voice came back crisp, commanding. Nothing like the trembling woman from the store. "I've been expecting your call, Mr. Washington." An hour later, she walked into that precinct in a tailored black suit, silver hair and a severe bun, and ordered a terrified sergeant to open my cell. She wasn't just a stranger who'd taken pity on me. She was a retired Superior Court judge, and 10 years earlier, Jared, under a different name, had walked out of her courtroom after defrauding another young bride's family and trying to have her committed. She'd sworn if she ever saw him again, she'd nail him. At her estate, she laid it out. Jared was drowning in gambling debt to a cartel, $500,000, deadline already passed. He didn't want my house to live in. He needed a fast cash sale to save his own life. That's why Lucille had to disappear from the picture, quietly, permanently. Her son David, a city cybersecurity analyst, pulled traffic camera footage and tracked a windowless medical transport van leaving my alley at 2 a.m. It led to a place called Sunny Pines, a warehouse for people families wanted to forget, and from there to an even bleaker facility, Unicare Center, behind chain link and razor wire. We drove there with Mrs. Higgins flashing an old inspector's badge to bully our way past a manager. I split off into a dim, locked-down wing that reeked of neglect. In room 112, I found her, Lucille, strapped to a bed in a hospital gown, drugged, her hair matted, nothing left of the woman who wouldn't sleep on anything but Egyptian cotton. An orderly spotted me. I ran, triggered the fire alarm for cover, and used a crowbar to break through the barred window from outside. I carried Lucille out through broken glass and dropped her into Mrs. Higgins's idling car. In the back seat, she sobbed the truth into my chest. Jared had told her it was a pre-flight spa, then drugged her and told her I'd died of a heart attack so she'd stop asking questions. I held my wife and promised her she was safe, but saving her wasn't enough anymore. I wanted him to feel exactly what she'd felt, so I called him. I told him I was out on bail, broken, ready to sign the house over just to buy a private hospital room instead of a state facility. Greed did the rest. He agreed to meet me at the house that night and mentioned he was bringing very motivated investors to inspect the property. The cartel. I had 2 hours alone in my own home before they arrived, and I used every minute of it. I rerouted the boiler's hot water into the old fire sprinkler system. I rewired the living room lights to a remote. I planted 4 hidden cameras streaming live to Mrs. Higgins and the police chief. I taped a live microphone under the sofa table. And I reactivated the steel storm shutters over every window and door, disabling the manual override so once they dropped, there was only one way out. Then I sat in the dark and waited. Jared arrived first, tracking mud across floors I'd sanded by hand, pouring himself my good scotch before I'd even said hello. Then came 3 men in leather jackets with dead eyes. Vargas and his associates, the cartel's collection team. Jared bragged to them on tape that I was basically a vegetable, that he'd planted the bat himself, hired a fake notary, and that Lucille wouldn't last long in that nursing home because pneumonia is a blessing in places like that. Chantel, standing by the door, realized in real time that her husband had never planned to keep her mother safe at all. I stepped out of the shadows. I wouldn't count on that, Jared. I hit the remote. The steel shutters slammed down, sealing all 4 of us and the cartel inside my living room in total darkness. Jared tore into the wall behind a painting, certain I had a hidden safe full of cash. He found it. It was empty except for a single note. The money is not here, you idiot. Check your pockets. You already spent it all. Vargas didn't wait for an explanation. He pinned Jared to the coffee table and pulled a knife, ready to collect his debt in fingers, one joint at a time. That's when I hit the second switch. Construction floodlights blazed on, and I stepped into full view behind my bulletproof glass French doors. Glass I'd upgraded myself the year before. I played them the security footage David had pulled from the nursing home. Jared standing over Lucille's restrained body, slapping her, forcing a needle into her arm, checking his watch and fixing his hair in the reflection, before walking out and leaving her unconscious. Chantel finally broke, clawing at her husband's face, screaming that he'd told her it was a doctor's sedative. Then Mrs. Higgins called the burner phone on speaker. "This is Judge Higgins. I've just issued a warrant for your arrest, Mr. Vance. And Mr. Vargas, the DEA is very interested in the 5 kilos in your trunk." Sirens swallowed the house. A battering ram tore the shutters open, and Chicago PD flooded the room. Jared tried to spin one last lie, screaming that I was the crazy one, that I'd kidnapped them all. Nobody believed him. Not with a recorded murder-for-hire voice memo David had also pulled from his phone. $15,000 for an accident that would look like a bad heart giving out on an icy staircase. He went down for attempted murder, kidnapping, fraud, and conspiracy. 25 years, no parole for 20. Chantel avoided prison by testifying against him, but lost everything else. The house, the cars, her name in this city. I didn't let her off easy either. When she begged me on that living room floor, sobbing that she didn't know about the hitman, I had the officers take her in as an accessory. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but she'd stood in that room and heard every threat against my life, and she'd only started crying once the police showed up. Lucis was harder still. When Mrs. Higgins brought her back to the wreckage of our home, she reached for me like nothing had changed. I let her know I believed she hadn't known about the nursing home, but I also reminded her she'd packed those bags willingly, signed away her half of our house for a plane ticket, and called me boring on her way out the door into a blizzard. I pulled out divorce papers I'd drafted a decade earlier and never filed, back when she'd blown through our savings on a scam timeshare. Then I handed her a one-way ticket to Florida, the trip she'd wanted all along, and told her to go. She left through a doorframe with no door left on it. The next morning, police dug up my backyard and pulled a buried handgun out of the flower bed, a weapon linked to an unsolved robbery homicide. Jared's real backup plan, an anonymous tip that would send police to my property, find the gun, and put me away for life if his other schemes failed. But the layers of snow above it were untouched, pristine, laid down after the gun was buried and before anyone had walked over that ground again. Combined with my alibi at the grocery store, that undisturbed snow was the only thing standing between me and a life sentence. Mrs. Higgins had been right from the very first day. If I'd shoveled that yard out of habit, out of pride, I'd have erased the evidence that saved me. I sold the house for $2 million. I didn't gamble it away like Jared had gambled his life away. I bought a rundown apartment block on the south side and turned it into low-cost housing for veterans. A leaking roof, forgotten men and women, exactly the kind of people nobody builds anything for anymore. I call it the barracks. I fix the sinks myself. Chantel writes me letters every week. I haven't opened one yet. Maybe someday. Lucille lives alone now in a cheap studio near a florist swamp, still telling anyone who listens that her wealthy husband in Chicago is going to send for her any day. She's waiting on a plane ticket that isn't coming. 6 months later, I was back in that same grocery store, watching a young mother get her card declined for milk and diapers. I saw the same shame rise in her neck that I'd once seen in Mrs. Higgins. I paid for it. Standard debit card this time, not platinum, but it worked just fine. Walking out, snow just beginning to fall outside the sliding doors, I told her the only thing worth telling. When the snow falls, pay attention to it. Watch where people walk. Watch where they don't. And if you see a footprint that doesn't belong, don't cover it up. I'm 71 years old. I lost my wife, my daughter, and $2 million in one winter. And I have never in my life felt richer because for the first time in 40 years, nobody standing near me is lying. The snow always melts eventually. What it leaves behind is the truth. Trust it.